A very warm welcome to the first 32 attendees joining our webinar NTCC COVID-19 Briefing. We'll wait for the other participants to join us as well, and we'll be back in a few moments. Thank you. A very warm welcome to the additional attendees zooming in on this NTCC COVID-19 briefing. At this moment, we are live, but we are also live on Facebook for anybody who would like to see us there as well. And we'll be starting in about 1 or 2 minutes. And thank you for joining. A very warm welcome to the additional attendees. We're nearing the 50 number already. Thank you for joining NTCC's COVID-19 briefing. It's almost 5 o'clock here in Bangkok, 6 o'clock at KL, and noon, I believe, in the Netherlands. We'll be starting in 1 minute. Thank you all. A very warm welcome to the NTCC COVID-19 briefing. It's 1 minute past 5 here locally in Bangkok, 1 minute past 6 in KL time, and in the Netherlands it's right afternoon. Thank you to all the attendees who signed up in these last few days and joining our Zoom session this afternoon. Thank you also to all the panelists who find time in their busy schedules to share their knowledge and to give their views on the topic discussions we will address this afternoon. Let me briefly introduce you our panelists for today. And let me start with Estee. She is living in KL and she is the representative of KLM as the country sales manager for both Thailand, Malaysia, and even Brunei. So a warm welcome all the way from KL. Thank you for joining us. I'll move on to our ambassador, Mr. Kees Rade. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. We have Rob Hurenkamp, being a president of the Netherlands-Thai Chamber of Commerce, but also the managing partner of Mazars here in Thailand. Thank you, Rob, for your participation. And last but certainly not least, Ernst-Otto Smit. He's the director of the Netherlands-Thai Chamber and as well the general manager of Greenwood Travel, meaning he is the expert on travel-related questions, which I know you have addressed to us already. This session, as you might have seen, is being recorded. That gives the opportunity to look back at a later stage. Tomorrow, we will communicate the link of this recorded session. It will be found on our NTCC Flix YouTube channel, but like I said, tomorrow we'll send it out. We also would like to ask if there are any additional questions you still have during this session, you can send that through the Q&A button. We did receive quite a lot of questions, and with all the technical questions which we have received, we will try to zoom into those. And if we don't have sufficient time to answer more questions, we'll come back to you by email. But thank you all for that on such a short notice. I know the topic is a lively debate worthy, and yeah, 63 attendees. That's already a very nice score, I would say. So I asked myself, is that because Estee, they all want to listen to you because you still have some vouchers or some refunds to give as KLM? Or is it maybe because Rob, our beacon of light in the dark days, that they want to listen to your comforting words? Is it perhaps you, Ambassador, being in the last few weeks when you're posting here in Bangkok, that they all want to wish you a farewell and a happy retirement? Or Ernst, is it because everybody is thinking of flying into Phuket and want to learn from you what a fantastic destination that is? I know the answer because I've seen the questions beforehand, and it will be a combination of all these things, I guess. But without further ado, I would like to ask the first speaker, which is our president, Rob Hurenkamp, to give his welcome address, his observations, and give him the floor to address to you all. Thank you, Rob, for joining, and thank you all for participating.
Well, thank you very much, Hans, for this introduction. Warm welcome, everybody. Yeah, a talk about COVID, and it's been the talk of the town already for the last 1.5 years. So we know a lot of things about it. So I try to give in my opening address a bit of an economic background, what the impact is, because it's pretty clear that it is an absolute human drama. And a bit of research learned that it is the third cause of reduced life expectancy at the moment in the US. So that's after cardio diseases and cancer. So it is that serious. And in that way, it is a real human crisis. But then if we think about crisis, we think of Winston Churchill, never let a good crisis go to waste. So let's see what we can learn and how we can build on that, and certainly on an economic perspective. And Jos Kamman, in his daily Facebook post on Thailand telex, he attended us that basically the rich are getting richer, and that triggered me a little bit. And I started thinking, why? Typisch Thailand telex, that's what it is. Yes. So it triggered me, and I think, well, why are the rich getting richer? And why are rich countries getting richer? So I sit back a little bit and start looking at what are the reasons why countries are coming out of a COVID situation fairly quickly and recover their economy fairly quickly. So I figured there are kind of 4 stages in the COVID pandemic. The first one is acceptance. Accepting that there is a pandemic, accepting that the virus is dangerous. Second is protection. So how to protect everybody in a single country and abroad. The third one is vaccination, and the last one is recovery. Well, if we go to acceptance, I think we have seen acceptance in China and Thailand in very early stages of the pandemic. The US and Brazil, I think they still haven't accepted that the COVID is dangerous. So there's a lot of resistance there. So it makes it difficult to really implement protective measures. And in terms of protection is geared towards limiting movements. And in China, it was kind of strange to see, but they were actually welding doors to keep people inside and to limit the movement. And these harsh methods, very obvious, they don't go very well in the US and in the Netherlands either. Having said that, in Thailand, the control of movement, certainly in the first wave, was pretty harsh as well, but it was fairly effective. And with scaling down of these measures, you saw the second wave and the third wave coming in, which was, yeah, it's getting worse and worse and worse. What if you don't accept the dangers of the COVID and don't accept that you need to be protected? Simply going back to US figures, where 33 million people were infected with COVID and more than 600,000 people died. And that are, of course, very serious numbers. Countries that accepted it fairly early, they fare much better in protecting their people. But do they control their economy? That's the second question, and we come later to that. So for the US in particular, it came as a blessing that Pfizer announced on the 9th of November that they found a medicine and that the clinical proofs were successful, very successful indeed. And I'm absolutely amazed with the speed of development of such a vaccine and the production of the vaccine, because by now 1.9 billion people have had their first jab already, and 900 million have had their second already, which is amazing how fast that goes. Unfortunately, there is still a shortage of vaccines worldwide, and we specifically see that here in Thailand, where Thailand for a long time kind of gambled on their ability to control the virus, to protect the people by limiting movements. And the AstraZeneca vaccine, which would be produced here in Thailand, and they would figure that by the end of this year, everybody could be vaccinated with that. Yeah, I think it was a misgamble. And that's what we see now, certainly in the third wave. Today we were above 7,000 cases. The prediction is next week we will touch the 10,000 cases per day. So it will go exponentially, and yeah, time to take some extra measures. And the vaccination in Thailand was not only a problem with the quantities available, but it was also a problem with distribution, where government indicate that first-line responders are and medical personnel are the first one to get their vaccinations, and then the second in line are the elderly people and the people with certain underlying diseases. What do we see in practice is, yes, medical staff, they get vaccines, yes. Politicians got their vaccines. And young people who are relentless in pushing refresh on a certain website, they got the vaccine. So basically, delivering the vaccine to older people has not yet been done. In that way, a vulnerable group in the Thai society doesn't have that vaccine yet. Still, let's face it, it's a dogfight, unfortunately, to get the vaccine in Thailand at the moment. Then I'd like to talk a bit about recovery, and I go back to the US again, where they announced a recovery package of $1 trillion, which is a huge amount. But the effect is that the US by 2021 is back, the economy of the US is back on pre-COVID levels. And if we start looking at Netherlands, the Netherlands will be back at 2022, and Thailand, well, if we are lucky, 2023, and it might be later. And then it's good to ask ourselves the questions. Well, why? Why is Thailand so much behind? I think first of all, The vaccination program is delayed. Another factor is the high reliance on the hospitality and tourism industry, who has been hit extremely hard. It went to 20% from GDP to kind of 0% of GDP. So very happy that at least there's a bit of an attempt to get the tourism industry started, and very happy to inform you that both Hans and Ernst-Otto were in Phuket last week, and actually Miss Ambassador as well were in Phuket to support the entrepreneurs and our members in Phuket. Hopefully will be a better business. Clearly, it will be a long way, and one of the underlying problems is the shortage of staff, as many of the hotel staff have changed their profession. They did a career switch from hospitality industry to farming industry. Another worrying point for Thailand is the very high level of household debt, which is at the moment about 90% of GDP. And you see in rich countries, it's the same level, but for a developing country, it's extremely high. What's even more worrying is that only 34% of the household debts relates to kind of good quality loans as mortgages, etc. The rest relates to personal loans, credit card loans, and car loans. So that's a huge amount. And these kind of loans, they go to with an interest percentage of 16 to 25%. You can imagine if people who have those loans get a bit of money, the first thing they do is repay or at least pay the interest rates, which is pretty high. So they don't have much money to spend to spend in general, and with that to recover the economy. A fourth one that I'd like to mention is SMEs, and SMEs are in general the catalyst for an economy. Whenever you want to boost an economy, just rely on your SMEs, and there are 5 million SMEs in Thailand. So yes, it should be a good base. However, also they are very hard hit by the COVID pandemic, and they are entering into a severe liquidity crunch. They have very limited access to capital and to external borrowings. So yes, they are deprived of cash basically to really start building their business. And I'm telling you nothing new, as 80% of our NTCC membership falls into the category of SME. So we all know that it can be struggling at the moment, and certainly in certain industries. Some good news then. Yes, the Thai government is also pouring 500 million Thai baht into the economy in whatever form or size it will be. I would like to know though that that is way too little at this point of time. Predicted that it would be good for 1.5% GDP growth, but I do believe far more is needed to come and to speed up to a level of pre-COVID. Another good news is that the manufacturing sector is doing very well actually, basically due to the recovery of the international of the worldwide economy. So great there. Hopefully that the logistic prices will not increase that much more to keep the competitiveness of the Thai economy. Now, in all that those items, it is pretty clear where you get rich. Get rich is being organized, have money, and dare to invest, which is a very short summary of a long story. Now, it's also how can the NTCC help you in those difficult times? Of course, we we continue to communicate what we know, as we are communicating that the Intervac website will be open for foreigners starting from Monday, so you can register there to get your vaccine. But it's not only what we do. We also in kind of in the back we are involved in the Joint Foreign Chambers of Commerce, and the Joint Foreign Chambers of Commerce is involved in the Thai Chamber of Commerce and the Board of Trade. Interestingly, those and specifically the Chamber of Commerce has approached the 50 largest companies in Thailand to see how we as business community can help the Thai government with the vaccination program. One of the committee is a communication committee, and that includes companies like Line and Facebook, and it's driven by the president of Unilever here. And they make sure that there's no fake news. So they spread only reliable news. But you can see whatever Facebook post you have related to COVID, you can click to a link where you get actual information and good quality information. So they make sure that everybody will get good information, but also to increase the vaccination preparedness. And they do a good job with that. The distribution part is setting up 25 points in Bangkok, which are set up and ready to roll out any vaccines they are available. Unfortunately, the number of vaccines available is too short, and you can imagine with the dogfight going on, with lobbying going on, with rules not fairly clearly identified, and certainly not very well controlled. Yeah, it is really not distributed on a rule-based way, and as many Dutch will have a bit more difficulties with it coming from a rule-based society. Anyway, it is what it is, and yes, as we see, we will need to comply with the guidelines of the Thai government and how they distribute and how they decide. And it wouldn't be Thailand even there was any kind of sideway. And yes, there is a sideway. There is a sideway for companies to order vaccines via the Chulalongkorn Royal Academy. And they have the license to import Sinopharm. And as a company, you can apply to purchase those vaccines for 888 baht per vaccine, per jab. And as NTCC, we have informed all members. We even wanted to spearhead the procurement of those vaccines. We were a bit disappointed with the interest in that program. So we advised the companies that were interested to really apply by themselves, and they have done and successfully. We have certainly 3 members that have been successfully allocated the number of vaccines they requested. LaserMed. Now I need to read.
That would be Kirloskar, Rob.
Yeah, Kirloskar. And of course Mazars, who have already secured the vaccines for their staff. So yes, there are opportunities. However, you need to jump on it, and there are long queues. So you need to be in time and follow up on a regular basis. Having said that, and I think I overrun my time quite a bit actually. I wish you a good seminar, and I'm looking forward to any kind of questions. Ernst, back to you.
Thank you indeed for that elaboration, Rob. We have also sent all the pre-sent questions to you as panelists, so that's why you also managed to flag a lot of the questions received. But any other questions indeed which we are receiving, we either replying directly or we'll come back to you all at the Q&A. Then it would be time for Ambassador to share his views and his presentation for this seminar. So Ambassador, if you're ready, please.
Thank you. You can hear me? Yes, okay. No, thank you. And indeed, it's a pleasure also from my part to participate in this seminar. And first of all, thanks to NTCC, Hans, for organizing this. I think this is a very good opportunity to inform your members and even more widely the Dutch community on where we are and where we are not. We know there are many questions, but again, we are very happy that you also opened up the possibility for non-NTCC members to also log in so that we can share our information as widely as possible. And thank you, Rob, for what was really a keynote speech. Very impressed by your the richness of your insights. Which can also at the same time make my story a bit shorter, because I think a number of elements, especially on the economic impact, I can gladly take on board, so I don't have to repeat all that. But let's say from our perspective, if you look at the general picture, well, first of all, we follow the Netherlands closely and Europe, and it's good to see that there we are definitely, we're not even talking about there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it seems that we are almost out of the tunnel. Having said it, of course, the last couple of days, we have new variants popping up. We have the figures going up again. But it strikes me that the Dutch government, they start to get slightly more worried, but they still seem to be convinced that because of the level of vaccinations in the Netherlands, we should be able to weather this new wave. Let's see where it all ends. Jury is still out, can go both ways. But you would say, scientifically speaking, because of the number of vaccinations, it's no matter what happens, it shouldn't be too difficult the next wave. But let's see. But anyway, as you know, in the Netherlands, people go to sports games again. They go to nightclubs. They go to restaurants. It's practically back to normal, and let's hope they can keep that up. And also in terms of economic activity, you see that in the Netherlands, everything is going up again. And of course, people were not able to spend a lot. So you also see a lot of, let's say, consumption expenses, which of course is very positive for the economy. And that's of course a big difference with Thailand. As Rob mentioned, the household indebtedness here, of course, is a big problem. So before we will see a similar pattern here will take a while probably. Turning to Thailand, well, it seems that we are more entering the tunnel than that we see the light at the end of the tunnel, unfortunately. And of course, every day again, we see these new figures with an increasing sense of alarm. What I always do, I divide them by 4 to see what it would mean in the Netherlands, since Thailand has roughly 4 times as many people living in the country than the Netherlands. And then the figures are still relatively mild, but the trend, of course, is definitely not good. And of course, what makes it even more worrying is that, again, in the Netherlands, we had this vaccination kicking in, but here the number of vaccinations is still very low. Although I understand that, for example, in Vietnam, it's even much, much lower. So in that sense, Thailand is slowly picking up. I think now we're at 10, 11% or something like that. So they did take a start, but it's definitely not sufficient yet. Talking about the Thai vaccination program, because of course that's also of interest to the expat community. I gave up trying to get a very clear picture of where we are in terms of vaccination purchases and so on. Every day, again, you read different figures in the newspapers. To be honest, Rob, you mentioned something about a communication site that gives good, verified information. I think that would be a very welcome tool, because again, you read something in the newspaper and the next day you read something relatively different. But one common thread is that you read really a lot about purchases of vaccinations. It will take a couple of weeks, perhaps a couple of months, but it seems that Thailand woke up And indeed, as Rob said, they were betting on the fact that, well, COVID would pass Thailand without too many problems. Now they realize that that's not going to happen. So they're really trying to catch up. And I couldn't give you very precise figures on the number of vaccines and the kind of vaccines, but we do read about contracts being approved by the government, contracts being signed with providers. So no matter what, it will kick off seriously all these vaccinations programs. So we are talking about a program of a couple of months, but really I think that after a while, also Thailand will hopefully find a way up again, also with a positive impact on the figures. What's of course very relevant is the expat, because that's the main the listeners to this program are of course expats mainly. Again, they're a very mixed picture. I was very happy to hear we had a coffee morning of the Nederlandse Vereniging Thailand a few days ago in the residence. Of course, less than 20 people because of the rules. But it was good to hear that even there, quite a few participants had received a vaccination, actually without too many problems. They just registered and they went there and they got it and they left again. So, and Rob, you said that also for companies, it is possible to register. And also that seems to work. So here and there, as I think you described it, a dogfight. Well, that's a very, very violent description of the reality, but it is true that it's haphazardly happening, but it is happening also for expats, fortunately. On the other hand, we also have to admit, and we also have received a lot of these stories, and Thailand blog and some other social media has quite a number of examples of that. We do have to recognize that quite a few foreigners, or expats, I should say, have witnessed being treated differently than Thai people, which of course is very unacceptable, to be honest, for all of us probably, but it does happen. And again, there is too much evidence to say that it's all fake news, it doesn't happen. No, it definitely does happen. It's very difficult to attach a figure or a percentage to that. I mean, basically nobody knows. Again, it's a very different reality depending on where you are and so on, but it does happen. What we have done as embassy, and not only we, but also all my like-minded colleagues and the European Union, we have repeatedly at different levels, including the highest level with the Prime Minister, expressed our opinion that this, of course, is totally unacceptable, that a difference is being made between Thai people and foreigners living in Thailand, expats, because, well, first of all, for logical reasons that if you really want herd immunity, it doesn't make sense to exclude a part of your population. So you have to treat everybody equally. Secondly, of course, there's a matter of, well, I would almost say human rights, that you can't treat people differently because of where they come from. And another important argument is, of course, the reciprocity. And that in all European countries, Thai people are treated exactly the same way as our own nationals. So in that sense, also with that argument, we've said that we really hope and expect that Thailand will follow a similar policy. Officially, we are being reassured that yes, that is absolutely the case, that they don't want to have a different treatment. Having said that, again, we have to recognize that that is just not the reality everywhere in Thailand. So this is an issue that is definitely on our agenda, that will keep on our agenda. I will have, Hans, you were so kind to remind me that I'm leaving soon, which is a reality. But so I will have some farewell meetings at, well, at different levels. And that is certainly also that I will repeat again. I know from some other colleagues who have left recently or are leaving together with me soon, they have done exactly the same. So in that sense, I think the whole of the international community is very solidly making this point. So if you ask me, and of course, this is one of the central issues of this session, what is your message to the Dutch people living in Thailand, expats from Dutch origin, is, well, the Dutch government policy is try to get vaccinated through the local program. Second answer that we always give is that you can also get a vaccination in the Netherlands if you go there. And of course, I realize that not every Dutch person is capable of booking a ticket with KLM, which is the next speaker probably. But of course, that's not a real solution for everybody, but hopefully also because the lockdown now has taken quite a long time. And I know that many Dutch people really are longing to have a frikandel in the Netherlands again. So also since you can't have them here anymore. So hopefully these people going to the Netherlands will be able to get a vaccination. There are two conditions. You have to have a BSN, a burgerservice-nummer, and you have a DigiD, a digit code. On the BSN, hopefully many Dutch people living here have one. If you don't have one, it is relatively easy to get one in the Netherlands. If you go for longer than 4 months to the Netherlands, of course, you have to register at in the city where you will be living, and you will get one automatically. If you go to the Netherlands for a shorter period than 4 months, you can go to, and now I have to look at my notes, registratie niet ingezetene. And to be honest, I won't even try to translate that in English, but it's basically, it's a window, and there are 19 cities in the Netherlands where there is such a window, where you can just walk in with your passport and explain your situation, and you will get on the spot, you will be registered. That's a registration for people who do not live in the Netherlands. And on the spot, you get one of these BSNs, and with that, again, a vaccination is possible. And then as far as DigiD is concerned, well, again, hopefully you have one, because it's really a very important thing to have in our society, in the Dutch society these days. It's kind of a personal key to all your files that are with the government, but also you are required to have one for banking purposes, for many purposes. So having one makes sense in general. And you can get one digitally, and then you have to pick up at the embassy your key, a code, and you have to come in person, because we have to check that you are really you, because we're only allowed to give it to you in person. Again, because it's such an important code, or such an important thing to have the DigiD, we really want to be very careful that there is no fraud or no misuse of that number. This all sounds very complicated, and perhaps it also is, but I would very much encourage those who have questions or who want to know more about all these rules. There is a website that I would highly recommend in general for all your questions, not only about COVID, but also about the driver's licenses, about whatever you want to know, which is called nederlandwereldwijd.nl. And again, if you click there, you'll see all the things you want to know. So what I've told you now, you can find it there. And also you can register for a number of these instruments I just mentioned. So again, I would really like to encourage you to have a look at nederlandwereldwijd.nl, because it has all the answers that you want. Again, you can register for vaccinations if you have a BSN and a DigiD. And they also have a question function. So if you have questions, you can also ask it there. Then perhaps turning to questions, Hans, indeed, you forwarded a few questions. And of course, one question that is very evident is our good French colleagues and friends have decided that they are vaccinating the French communities in countries where it is difficult to get a local vaccination, and Thailand qualifies. I understand from them that about 70 countries qualify for this program. I understand it's only for the French citizens, so not for partners or families. And they are rolling it out as we speak. And of course, a number of questions were, and to be honest, if I would be a Dutch citizen living in Thailand, I would have exactly the same question. Why isn't the Netherlands doing the same? Well, the Dutch government has taken the political decision not to roll out a similar program for Dutch citizens living abroad, probably mainly because of the logistical aspects of such an operation. Because of course, you can not only do it for Thailand. If you do it for Thailand, you have to do it for Indonesia, you have to do it for Malaysia, and presumably following the French analysis for around 70 countries. And the government has decided that we just don't have the logistical capacity to roll out such an operation. And of course, we are not the only ones. I mean, I would say the great majority, if not almost all other embassies follow a similar line. Of course, we have China and we have Russia. Well, these have different capacities than the great majority of other embassies in Thailand or worldwide. But anyway, again, this is something, if you look at the EU, France is the only one. Belgium was mentioned, but that was fake news. So Belgium is also not doing it. And again, this is the political decision that The Hague took. We do provide vaccinations, but we do that, I mean, to other countries, but that's in the framework of COVAX. And COVAX is a program agreed worldwide, also with the WHO and with other multilateral organizations. And the purpose of COVAX is to, because Rob, you mentioned the inequality that would be growing because of COVID. Well, unfortunately, you're absolutely right, but also the inequality in the world, that some countries, of course, have more funds available to buy vaccines, but for some others, that's much more difficult. And the purpose of COVAX is to create an instrument where the more wealthy countries can provide vaccines or money, and it's being distributed to countries that have more problems in that respect. And the Netherlands provides quite a generous contribution to the COVAX program, but that's the channel we have chosen to provide vaccines to other countries, but the let's say within the Netherlands. I could imagine that some of you are like, yes, but you know, I'm not very happy with this, and I really would like to stress the dire situation in Thailand, and is there really nothing you can do? Again, as embassy, of course, we did communicate to our ministry and to the health authorities about the situation in Thailand. I'm pretty sure that my colleagues in New Delhi, in Brasilia, in Jakarta, and in many other countries have done exactly the same, because again, these are countries where the situation is probably even much worse than in Thailand. Nevertheless, this is the political decision that has been taken, again, as most other countries did take as well. Well, since this is a given, this is a political decision taken, of course, we as embassy are implementing that decision. Having said that, hopefully all the Dutch people living in Thailand have used their democratic right and have voted in the last elections. So you do have a representative in parliament. So if you have feelings about this, please, by all means, approach your political representatives in parliament. I mean, that's what the democracy is about, and that's how it works. And if political parties pick this issue up, and I have no idea if they're interested or not, to be honest, I know some of you have done that already. But again, if you do that and they pick it up, well, if that leads to another political decision, of course, we as embassy will totally, with all the energy we can muster, will certainly, of course, implement it. But again, for the moment, this is the political decision of the Dutch government. And well, we are, that's what basically we are implementing. I think this is at this particular stage what I would like to share with you. And again, very much the nederlandwereldwijd.nl, because there you can find all the answers, especially to the more technical questions. So I think I will leave it at that, Hans, and thanks for the time you gave me.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. In the meantime, some additional remarks and questions came in, so we'll probably come back to you in the Q&A as well. Now it's time for you, Estee from KLM, to share your slides with us. You prepared a slide deck of 7-8 slides. Please take your time, and questions for KLM can also be raised in this Q&A session, and colleague Surt in the Bangkok office is replying already instantly. So if you have some KLM related questions, feel free, audience, to raise them now. And Estee, if you want to unmute yourself, we'll start sharing screen right away.
Thank you, Hans. Firstly, let me thank NTCC for letting me have an opportunity to reach out to the via this webinar on travel updates with KLM. And also this, I realized that Excellency is leaving, and I'm glad at least I get to meet you in this webinar before you leave. All right, without further ado, let me just go straight to the next slide. This is the KLM network in Southeast Asia. What I would like to highlight is the fact that we have weekly flights between Bangkok and Amsterdam. We have 8 flights weekly. And of course, the most updated information that we shared and we want to share today is that we will have the Phuket operation effective October. Most of you would remember when the crisis struck, a lot of cities in fact, not just Asia, in fact, the whole world, we had to cut a lot of capacity. There were a lot of frequency changes. But Bangkok, it is notable to highlight this fact. Bangkok was the only station that grew in terms of capacity. In fact, we had more flights than the usual. A lot of stations, even Kuala Lumpur, for that matter, from daily, we became only 3 flights a week. So Bangkok was, at one point of time, we called it the mini hub of Schiphol Airport, because Bangkok had the most number of flights being the transit or the main hub for this area. The next slide, please. This is just a schedule to give an idea on the direct flights that we have directly from Bangkok to Amsterdam. Like I mentioned, we have 8 flights a week. And the best part is we will have 1 additional destination in Thailand, and that is our Phuket flights. And effective October, we will get 4 weekly flights to Phuket, thanks to the initiative of the Sandbox initiative by the Thai government. The next slide, please. Of course, there are preparations for entry into Thailand. I will not go into each and every detail, but as the current update, this is the most up-to-date information that we have in terms of pre-departure preparation to the date of departure, and then on board, what is the do and don'ts and arrival. But what I would like to also mention is that because of the situation that keeps evolving, we always make changes depending on the rules and regulations that come in. So this is the requirements that is applicable currently, but nearer to the date of departure, we always ask our passengers to please check online, because we have all the information in the website for everyone to check so that they can be prepared for their trip. Next slide, please. Again, it's extensive, but we do have a list of documentation for non-Thai nationals to enter into Thailand. And again, because we are operating into Phuket in October, so I would expect some of the regulations to change. And one of the questions I believe that came in was about the test. And for that, later on, I think we will touch on it, but the quarantine part, whereby customers are to pay for their PCR test, that's part of the cost that is already being taken on when they make a booking to go into Phuket. The next slide, please. This is a Sandbox program. So again, there's a whole set of documents that is required for Thais and non-Thai nationals. And earlier on, I touched on the negative PCR test. My colleague Hunsert kindly pointed out that when a passenger signs up for the program, the cost that they pay in the hotel cost and their stay, it already includes the test. So that's something to think about. The next slide, please. I believe this might not be new to everyone. If you would like to make a booking, it's available on our website. Of course, we also have a call center that is available to assist in all the bookings, or the travel agent. And again, like I mentioned, because the information keeps changing, the most reliable point of information when it comes to traveling on us would be via our website. And on the website, there is a function or a document that is automated. It's called KLM Travel Doc. And if you just click on it, it will provide our customers with all the related travel information that is applicable. So that, when they travel on the flight, they go to the airport, everything is prepared. They already know what to expect, what kind of documentation is required. Next slide, please. Of course, before I end, I would just like to mention that currently, as the world is fixated on safety, so KLM was nominated. Now we have been awarded the highest diamond status by Apex Health Safety. So I believe with awards such as this, it recognizes the effort of KLM in ensuring safety, and of course, because health is a main priority for every customer. So having this kind of a certification would give give confidence to all our customers. The next slide, please. So the tagline, of course, is travel with confidence, because we have taken all necessary health and safety measures on board and at the airport. So when our customers fly with us, we want them to fly with a peace of mind. The next slide, please. That's about it. I thank you for your attention, and I believe I give the floor back to Hans so that you can take on for the next question and answers.
Great, and we thank you, Estee. Very nice. With your permission, we'll be sharing your slides because there might be some detailed questions coming in. We will share that tomorrow in our communication post-event. So we'll have your slides also presented to this audience or whoever would like to learn more. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
That leaves us at this moment with Ernst-Otto, last but not least, Ernst-Otto Smit. If you would be so kind to share your views and your experience and advice, what you can offer the audience when they decide to travel, either to the Netherlands and then making plans for their return trip, or using the Phuket Sandbox as the way of entry, or as a domestic, let's say, holiday goer to fly into Phuket and escape a potential lockdown Bangkok will face probably in the coming days. Ernst-Otto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hans. Greenwood Travel, we do for the last 28 years inbound tourism, mainly from the Netherlands and Belgium, so the Dutch speakers. Now that stopped, of course, after March. Then COVID also came to Europe, so we had to stop everything. We had to refund all the programs booked, so big shock. Lucky we do the business for a long time, so we could continue with a smaller team. We had to let people go. Some people went back to the families, so I think that is with most companies. And what we do now is ASQ travel. So when there was an option to travel to Thailand and be in quarantine, we had mainly business travelers. We had tourists who came for 3 months because Thailand was good and Europe was not good regarding COVID. And we had people who had family here, a house. So those three, we arranged the trips for. A lot of work, we do everything. People don't actually have to go to the Thai embassy. They only have to go to the Thai embassy if they need a special visa. So if they come here for, let's say, 2 months, they get a visa for 45 days, they can extend it here. They don't have to go to the embassy and we do all the work for them. So that worked well, a lot of work, but we got regular, the business people, tourists, and people who have houses here. Now we have Phuket Sandbox, and you see a complete shift that people, instead of using the ASQ hotels here in Bangkok and in Pattaya, they move now to Phuket. So we already have some bookings. We stayed, we went there on the first day to see the members of the NTCC and tell them about all the options and also to help each other. That was a very good thing what we did there. Now we see that it moves immediately to Phuket because there is no quarantine there, except for the first day. So when people arrive, they do a COVID test at the airport and they have to stay one night in their room. Most flights arrive in the afternoon, so you come in, you stay in your room, the test result will be the next morning. They can go out and they can enjoy Phuket for 14 days. No restrictions there. They have to download apps and they have to do several other PCR tests for what is just new for young children younger than 6 years. They only have to do a mouth swab to check regarding if they have COVID, not more. So much at this moment, no really family bookings. We have some inquiries, but no real bookings. So, Samui will open on 15 July. That is the plan, not really approved, but that is what what we hear. And but there it will be a bit different. People have to stay for the first 3 nights in the room, quarantine. They don't call it an ASQ, but they call it AQ, you know, alternative quarantine. So they have to stay for 3 nights in their hotel room in Koh Samui. If the test negative, they can go out for the other 4 days. So that is then 7 days. 3 days quarantine, 4 days they can stay only in the hotel. So they cannot travel over the island. They have to stay in the hotel. They can go to the swimming pool. So it's still a semi-quarantine. After 1 week, second COVID test, if that's negative, they can travel freely over Koh Samui, or they can go to Koh Phangan, or they can go to Koh Tao. So then they're free. So it's a different setup than Phuket. So I have to see how this is going to work because it just came out. What is new also, because what we heard from our ambassador, we get now quite a lot of bookings really for people who want to go to the Netherlands to get their vaccination there, because many people, they didn't get it, or they can get the Sinovac or Sinopharm, which they not prefer. So we have now kind of vaccination trips to the Netherlands. And that works well. So we help people from, okay, what they have to do. They need, of course, the DigiD. They need their civil service number, in Dutch BSN. They can make appointments, and they can even make an appointment at Schiphol Airport. The only thing is they don't really know what kind of vaccine they're going to get. So when they land at Schiphol Airport, they can get even the vaccine the moment they arrive. So that is kind of well organized. Then, of course, they can come back to Thailand after the last vaccine. So if they get Janssen, it's good because only one jab, wait 14 days, you can come back to Thailand. And I also saw some questions in the chat. If you get your Janssen vaccine, you can come back after 14 days. If you have a visa, you don't have to go to the Thai embassy. Actually, the only reason you have to go to the Thai embassy is when you need some kind of long stay visa. But Thailand is kind of easy now with extending visas. So I recommend people to come back here with a 45-day and extend their retirement visa. Or it's still complicated because you call to the immigration, you ask the question, I get three different answers. Or you can extend your, most of the time, retirement visas, or you can extend your retirement visa here. This we all have to do on individual basis, because with most people it's not similar. So we help them. So this is something new that we get now people from Dutch people and Belgian people going back to get vaccinated in the Netherlands. And then you can use, of course, the Phuket Sandbox or the Samui Plus, as they call it, to come back. I recommend at this moment Phuket because no restrictions, but maybe Koh Samui will make it more easy than it is now. Any questions? It's all, yeah, we all tailor-made it. Just contact us, contact the NTCC, and we will help you. Hans?
Thank you, Ernst-Otto. Clear to me, but probably a lot of questions which are still relevant for individual, let's say, flyers, customers, travelers. I received quite some questions from Willem Penteman, and I'm reading through them. I will address them to you, Ernst-Otto, later by email. So Willem Penteman will come back to you by email to your questions. I'm staying with you, Ernst-Otto, at this moment. Question coming in from Peter van Zanten, who is planning his trip to Europe and to the Netherlands. Is it possible for him to pre-arrange, let's say, all the paperwork prior to his departure? So can he already start planning and start getting all the paperwork done, which you mentioned? You don't have to physically go to the Thai embassy in The Hague. So can we help people like Peter planning the whole trip, returning into either Bangkok or Phuket before they start leaving?
That is only simple answer. That can only be done if he is fully vaccinated here in Thailand, and otherwise not. Because to get your certificate of entry, you need proof of vaccination. So if Mr. Peter van Zanten is fully vaccinated here in Thailand, we can arrange that. And you know, the Sinovac, Sinopharm is not kind of, it's approved. So even if it's Sinovac or Sinopharm, it's good. It's good. So that is the answer.
Okay. I still recommend all the audience, if you have particular questions, you can channel them through us, NTCC, or directly to Ernst-Otto, because I think it might be a particular case, case by case in certain questions. Thank you for that, Ernst-Otto. I would like to move to Ambassador. We have received in the meantime some additional questions, and one by email from Friso Koopman. Friso Koopman mentioned that considering the less than optimal vaccine rollout in Thailand and delays, can the Dutch government assist the Thai government with supplies of vaccine similar to what the Japanese government has been doing? Ambassador.
Well, as I think I mentioned already, that the only support the Dutch government gives to third countries in terms of providing vaccination is being done through the COVAX system. There might be one exception. I'm not sure that Suriname, because we also gave vaccines to Suriname, but it was for the obvious historical links we have with Suriname. But apart from that, the government has chosen the path that most governments have chosen, which is to do it in an organized multilateral framework. But I don't think there is any intention at the moment to provide any additional vaccinations to a country like Thailand, as far as I know.
Thank you for that. And I would like to stay with you, Ambassador. You mentioned the political decision which was taken in The Hague of not vaccinating the Dutch population outside of the Netherlands. If that is, and you also mentioned the practicalities where you might feel that is the reasoning of that, the practicalities, the logistical element. If there are organizations, if there are companies, let's say in our particular case in Thailand, willing to take over the logistical headache and the organization, is that an opening where perhaps through the embassy, the Dutch government might be giving a different answer if we take away that, let's say, pain point?
Well, again, the issue is logistics, but also, of course, the availability of vaccines. And I just don't know if in the Netherlands we are already at the stage where we can happily share vaccines with third countries, except for COVAX. But again, in COVAX, we also do it in terms of money. But I'm not sure that if companies would take over, and thanks for that offer and for thinking with us, but I'm not sure that that would entirely take away the fact that still you would have to organize it in terms of transport from wherever they would come from to presumably Schiphol Airport, then put them in the right plane and so on. And I'm not sure there would be many companies that could take care of all these logistical dimensions. Plus that, of course, the vaccination is very much a government-to-government operation so far. And as you know, in Thailand, for example, there are all kinds of private hospitals who are dying to get more vaccines, but they can only, from Thailand, only the government can buy vaccines, can subsequently share them with private sector, that's their decision, but it's still very much a government-controlled international process. So there are a number of, let's say, challenges to be surmounted if you would kind of outsource the logistical part. What I do know, Hans, and I'm looking at you, is that, of course, the British Chamber of Commerce did take an initiative, and perhaps it would be interesting to see if that would be another way that for your members, and of course, the majority of people attending this session are members of NTCC, I guess, that the British Chamber of Commerce took some kind of an initiative. Although I have to admit, I don't know the details, but I understand that they play some kind of an intermediary role between vaccines and their members.
Thank you for that answer. Before I will reply on that one, rest assured, if there is an opening from the Dutch government and there is a slight chance and a need for logistical support or operational support as well, we are here to support in any way. So if that is a possibility, let's see if that might be opening up. What the British Chamber is doing, has been doing in the last few days, they have been asking British citizens to sign up on a database, 60-year-old people and the persons with underlying diseases. They have communicated that they will try when the possibility arises, it's a lot of ifs and buts, to have, through personal contacts of somebody within the VCCT and the Ministry of Medicine, or the ministry here in Thailand, Anutin to be precise, that if there's an opening, that there might be chances of, let's say, a British citizen giving a certain advantage. A little bit different than, for example, our friends from the Swiss embassy are doing. They are not vaccinating the Swiss, what I understand, through the context of the Swiss chamber. The Swiss embassy is calling hospitals for potential leftovers on a daily basis, and they share that on a Facebook. So sometimes I see there are 10 vaccines available for this week. And yesterday it was even 160. So there are some initiatives taken indeed by our colleagues here in Thailand. And this is something we take very seriously within, of course, the NTCC board, and this is an ongoing discussion where we can support. So thank you for raising that, Ambassador. Let me now move to Rob. I have also a question for you, Rob. This is more on a financial assistance and economy basis. The support program was indeed announced by the Thai government, and financial assistance for restaurant owners in particular were mentioned. Are you aware perhaps of any such programs for other sectors or companies or even individuals here in Thailand?
Thank you very much for that question. And I really can understand it. As many of us are in SMEs, and it is getting tough, and there's a cash crunch. The short answer is no, I don't have any other information of any kind of support. There's a big pot of money, 500 million, and that will be distributed in one or another way. How that will dribble down into a business community or in individuals, and my gut feel says it will go for a big part to individuals, as the need is high. So I'm not aware of any kind of initiatives at this moment, but it is a very fluid situation, So it can change very quickly. On the other hand, I do believe that the pandemic first needs to be under control before really support measures and stimulus within an economy should be launched. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you. I'm screening through some of the other questions which came in. Michiel de Cleer, can Thai spouses also get vaccinated in the Netherlands if they travel together to the Netherlands? It's not as easy and not as simple without having a Dutch BSN number, etc. It will be very complicated, but we'll come back to you, Michiel, about that question. KLM, Estee, it's nice to hear that Phuket is on your itinerary as of October. Do you see any chances of moving that up? From a previous airline gentleman, I know that is not an easy question to answer, but is there any way that the Phuket, let's say the KL flight with Phuket combination would be starting earlier than October?
For the time being, as I mentioned, starting a new frequency, and in this case, a new destination, as you may say, even though it's in Thailand, it takes a lot of time planning, and it also depends on the aircraft availability. Whether or not, I doubt very much, because normally the schedule, once it's already set in the system, there are lots of things. It's not just to publicize that we have a flight, but a lot of preparation has to be done. For example, we have to start a new office in Phuket. We have to set up a new team at the station, and this takes time, not just on our own operations, but also the regulations in place, because to set up a new site office, a new team, it also requires a preparation, both the government side, regulatory, as well as team preparation. So we also have to deploy additional staff, new teams. So I would say the fact that we have it in October is already a plus sign. Yeah? So that one for sure, we will have a flight. But of course, it's always emphasized that operational changes do happen, it do occur, because a lot is also dependent on the government regulations. Because the Phuket Sandbox is a great initiative. That's why KLM decided to quickly take initiative and really launch a flight to Phuket. So let's see how it goes, but for sure, October, Phuket, here we come.
Thank you for that. I'm going through a few other questions, and at the same time looking at the time, I'll keep this moderate. We'll continue for another 5 minutes to answer some of the questions which came in. A few people have asked a similar question, and thanks for that. And now let me see how is the best. Yeah, Jim Gromzig, thank you for your questions. You had some KLM related questions which I noticed were answered. The question is, what kind of vaccination proof will be provided after full vaccination in Thailand? And is this proof accepted in the Netherlands and any other countries? This is actually a relevant question, because at the moment I understand from the Netherlands, from Thailand, we can fly into the Netherlands and we don't have to show any vaccination, because we are still considered a green or whatever great color. That might change. That might, of course, deteriorate. I'm not surprised if that would deteriorate. I'm not sure whether Ambassador is able to answer this question, whether there's any, let's say, legal requirements, or from an embassy point of view, legalisatie potential in the future, that it might become relevant that the embassy needs to stamp that this particular certificate from a local hospital in Bangkok is considered a valid vaccination proof. Is that something you can shed your light on, Ambassador?
Well, first of all, I think it's no secret that the registration of vaccinations in the Netherlands itself is also still a bit of a challenge, with all kinds of vaccinations that are registered at a central point somewhere, which subsequently are not, you can't find it in the app that has been designed to use with a QR code in the Netherlands if you want to go to a concert and show that you prove that you have been vaccinated. So there are still some hiccups, and of course we are, I would say, all over the world still struggling a little bit with how to have a global system that we all recognize each other's vaccinations. As far as Thailand is concerned, I understand that now there is some kind of an orange kind of document from hospitals when you get a vaccination. And I understand we have submitted the question to The Hague, whether this document could be recognized as valid proof of vaccination. So it is work in progress. But again, I think some departments are a bit overwhelmed by all these questions coming from all over the world, of course. And every time again, they have to assess about how reliable are the procedures and so on. And again, even our own system is not really bulletproof yet. So it's very much work in progress, but it has been brought to the attention of the Netherlands.
Thank you for that, Ambassador. And there's one final question, then you're off the hook for today. Coming in from Onno Stiemen. Is there any way to book a Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the Netherlands ahead? So already out of Thailand when I do have my BSN and DigiD. So can I start planning my schedule for my Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the Netherlands ahead of time?
There is a website. Yeah, that's not a very surprising answer. If you want to get vaccinated in the Netherlands, and again, all this information is on nederlandwereldwijd.nl, but there is you can click on a website which is called coronatest.nl/ with the very surprising title, Ik wil me laten vaccineren / een online afspraak maken. Sorry for this terribly long answer. But again, there is, you can click on, and it takes a bit of patience, but you can register online to make an appointment for a vaccination. No need to repeat with the BSN and DigiD, but it is possible. Having said that, you know, we have this problem, the VPN problem. But if you, because sometimes it's not accessible from abroad, but if you have a VPN, you can access this website. And there's also a phone number, perhaps even. Again, check the website.
Thank you for that. I will reach out to your colleague before we send out tomorrow's newsletter, and we'll make reference to all the websites you have mentioned during today's webinar and potential any other ways to contact. Thank you for that. Peter van Zandt, in the meantime, relating to the question which was coming earlier, the More Prom app provides all info on your vaccination status, including an international vaccination document. So this is also in reply to the question which is a relevant remark we received in the past few days and a few minutes as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 60 minutes past 6 o'clock. More questions are still unanswered, but I think the relevant questions I have been zooming into have been replied or will be replied by email. You know where to find us, and you know where one of our panelists is always happy to share their vision, their thoughts, and their answers. This also brings me to a thank you to all the panelists. Estee, all the way from KL, thank you for joining us. Ambassador as well, not far from where I'm positioned. Rob Hurenkamp, thank you for your wisdom and your words. And of course, Ernst-Otto for sharing your knowledge on travel-related questions. Again, if there are any more questions or any more remarks, or where you feel we as NTCC can help or support even further, please don't hesitate. You all know how to reach us to the various means. This will then also be the end of this webinar. We might have another webinar in a few weeks from now with further updates. We always say the same. We wish you safe and healthy as much as you can. Look after each other. Maybe a final question to whoever wants to reply first. Maybe I'll ask the ambassador. Is there any information maybe the embassy have received from the Thai government about an upcoming lockdown in Bangkok?
No. Sorry, I could be very diplomatic, but we are not involved in it. I don't think there are many people in Thailand who know at all what will be the decision. Of course, there is the economic point of view, there's the health point of view, and out of that, a decision will emerge, and we'll read it at the same time you will read it.
And I believe from the news, indeed, tomorrow it will be on the CCSA deliberation, so we'll keep that posted. Like I said, I wish everyone a nice remainder of this evening. Thank you all for joining, participating. We'll be communicating tomorrow through the newsletter the link of this recorded video. with all the information as much as we can. And please do reach out if you have any other more questions. Thank you all for joining. Wish you stay healthy and safe, and hope to see you at another webinar NTCC event, and a good summer holiday for the ones who are flying to Europe. And again, I hope to see you back in good health. Bye-bye.